The immediate physicality of Jamie was more than enough to banish the touch of lingering dreams. And Frank, if that was Frank, was right so far as that went. I was sure that if such a thing were possible, Bree would want both her fathers at her wedding. I was wide awake now, but much too comfortable to move. It was raining outside. A light rain, but the air was cold and damp enough to make the cosy nest of quilts more inviting than the distant prospect of hot coffee, particularly since the getting of coffee would involve a trip to the stream for water, making up the campfire. Oh, God, the wood would be damp even if the fire hadn't gone completely out, grinding the coffee in a stone quern and brewing it while wet leaves blew round my ankles and drips from overhanging tree branches slithered down my neck. Shivering at the thought, I pulled the top quilt up over my bare shoulder and instead resumed the mental catalogue of preparations with which I had fallen asleep. Food, drink. Luckily, I needn't trouble about that. Jamie's Aunt Jocasta would deal with the arrangements, or rather, her black butler Ulysses would. Wedding guests? No difficulties there. We were in the midst of the largest gathering of Scottish Highlanders in the colonies, and food and drink were being provided. Engraved invitations would not be necessary. Bree would have a new dress, at least. Jocasta's gift as well. Dark blue wool. Silk was both too expensive and too impractical for life in the backwoods. It was a far cry from the white satin and orange blossom I had once envisioned her wearing to be married in, but then this was scarcely the marriage anyone might have imagined in the 1960s. I wondered what Frank might have thought of Brianna's husband. He likely would have approved. Roger was a historian, or once had been, like Frank himself. He was intelligent and humorous, a talented musician, and a gentleman, thoroughly devoted to Brianna and little Jemmy. Which is very admirable indeed, I thought in the direction of the mist, under the circumstances. You admit that, do you? The words formed in my inner ear as though he had spoken them, ironic, mocking both himself and me. Jamie frowned and tightened his grasp on my buttock, making small waffling noises in his sleep. You know I do, I said silently. I always did, and you know it, so just bugger off, will you? I turned my back firmly on the outer air and laid my head on Jamie's shoulder, seeking refuge in the feel of the soft, crumpled linen of his shirt. I rather thought Jamie was less inclined than I, or perhaps Frank, to give Roger credit for accepting Jemmy as his own. To Jamie, it was a simple matter of obligation. An honourable man could not do otherwise. And I knew he had his doubts as to Roger's ability to support and protect a family in the Carolina wilderness. Roger was tall, well-built, and capable, but bonnet, belt, and sordie were the stuff of songs to Roger. To Jamie, they were the tools of his trade. The hand on my bottom squeezed suddenly, and I started. "Sassenach," Jamie said drowsily. "You're squirming like a toodling in a wee lad's fist. Do you need to get up and go to the privy?" "Oh, you're awake," I said, feeling mildly foolish. "I am now," he said. The hand fell away and he stretched, groaning. His bare feet popped out at the far end of the quilt, long toes spread wide. "Sorry." "I didn't mean to wake you." "Och, dinna fash yourself," he assured me. He cleared his throat and rubbed a hand through the ruddy waves of his loosened hair, blinking. "I was dreaming like a fiend. I always do when I sleep cold." He lifted his head and peered down across the quilt, wiggling his exposed toes with disfavour. "Why did I not sleep with my stockings on?" "Really? What were you dreaming about?" I asked with a small stab of uneasiness. I rather hoped he hadn't been dreaming the same sort of thing I had. "Horses," he said, to my immediate relief. I laughed. "What sort of fiendish dreams could you be having about horses?" "Oh, God, it was terrible." He rubbed his eyes with both fists and shook his head, trying to clear the dream from his mind. "All to do with the Irish kings. You ken what Mackenzie was saying about it at the fire last night."